The Texas heat was a physical thing, a bully that pressed down on the town of La Mesa until you could barely breathe. It baked the asphalt, shimmered over the parched fields, and seeped into the cracks of a man's soul. For me, Jack Rourke, it was just another kind of pressure, like the debt I owed a man named Silas, a man whose smile didn't reach his cold, dead eyes. Silas didn't break legs, he broke spirits, then he broke bones. I was running out of both. That's why I was sitting in a rust-eaten F-150, staring at the Gulf of Mexico, the air thick with the smell of salt and decay. Beside me, Lola, my wife, looked like a movie star who'd taken a wrong turn. Her blonde hair was perfect, her lips a slash of red against her tanned skin. She was the prize and the partner in this final, desperate gamble. "You sure about this, Jack?" she asked, her voice a low purr that had sold 100 bad deals. "Once we cross that line, there's no coming back." "Honey," I said, lighting a cheap cigar, the smoke curling around the rearview mirror, "coming back is the one thing I'm counting on, just not as me." The plan was a thing of beauty, if you like that sort of thing. A masterpiece of desperation. We'd taken out a hefty life insurance policy on me 6 months ago. $500,000. The kind of money that buys a new life, a new name, a new start far from Silas and the dust-choked ghosts of my past. Tonight, I was going to die. Lola would report me gone, a tragic fishing accident. We'd go out in the rented boat, I'd fall overboard during a squall. She'd make a show of panicking, of trying to save me. The Gulf is big and it's hungry. They'd find the boat, maybe a piece of my shirt, but they'd never find me. I had a change of clothes, a new identity, and a beater car waiting 50 miles up the coast. In a week, I'd be a ghost. In 2, Lola would be a grieving widow with a check. "You have the rendezvous point?" I asked for the 10th time. "Matamoros," she sighed, a picture of patient suffering. "The cantina with the dancing donkey. How could I forget? 3 weeks. You wait 3 weeks for the heat to die down, then you collect the money and you meet me. We'll be sipping margaritas and laughing at this whole damn state." She leaned over, her perfume cutting through the stale cigar smoke. "I'll be there, Jack. I'm not letting you go." She kissed me, and for a second, I almost believed her. That was my first mistake, believing a woman like Lola could ever love a man like me. She loved the game, the thrill, the potential payoff. The man was just a prop. The squall hit right on schedule. The sky turned the color of a fresh bruise, and the sea turned into a churning, angry beast. It was perfect. The rain lashed down, turning the deck into a slippery sheet of death. I gave Lola one last look, a look I hoped said, brave and tragic, but probably just looked scared. Then I went over the side. The shock of the cold water stole my breath. I let the current pull me away from the boat, fighting the instinct to shout to signal her. I was supposed to be dead. I swam underwater, using the flash of lightning to orient myself, away from the boat towards the dark shoreline. It was the hardest swim of my life. When I finally crawled onto the muddy bank, gasping for air, I was a new man. A man with no name, no past, and a future full of promise. I found the car, the clothes, the stash of cash. Everything was perfect. For 3 weeks, I laid low in a flea-bag motel in a dusty border town, watching Spanish soap operas and eating greasy tacos. I was a phantom. I read the online papers from back home. The La Mesa Gazette ran a story on me. Local businessmen lost in tragic boating accident. They even used a good picture of me. I looked trustworthy. Lola played her part to perfection. The quotes from her were heartbreaking. "He was my whole world," she told the reporter. I almost felt a pang of guilt. Almost. The 3 weeks crawled by. I packed my bag, paid my bill, and drove towards Matamoros, my heart thumping a rhythm of anticipation. I could almost taste the tequila, feel the sun on my face. We'd done it. We'd beaten the system. The cantina was exactly as we'd pictured it, loud, hot, and filled with the desperate laughter of people trying to forget their lives. I took a table in the corner, ordered a beer, and waited, and waited. The dancing donkey did its tired routine. The sun went down. The place filled up, then emptied out. Lola never showed. I told myself not to panic. There were a dozen reasons. Car trouble. She got sick. She was being careful. I gave it another day, then another. The sick, cold feeling in my gut started to spread. This wasn't just a delay. This was wrong. On the 4th day, I went to an internet cafe. My hands were shaking as I typed her name into the search bar. What I found turned my blood to ice. It wasn't an obituary. It was a society page piece from the Houston Chronicle. A picture of Lola, looking stunning in a white dress, her arm linked through the arm of a man I'd never seen before. He was tall, silver-haired, with a tan that looked expensive, and a smile that was all teeth. The caption read, "Lola Rourke, widow of the late Jack Rourke, finds solace with Houston real estate mogul Carter Vance at the annual Cattle Barons Ball." Solace. The word was like a kick in the teeth. I dug deeper. It didn't take long. Carter Vance was big money, oil, real estate, politics. He was everything I pretended to be, but for real. And he was with my wife, my widow. The final blow came from a financial news site, an article about Vance's latest acquisition. It mentioned his new fiancée, the recently widowed and resilient Lola Rourke, who had just liquidated a substantial life insurance policy, a policy worth $500,000. The money was being used to fund Vance's new development project. She hadn't just moved on. She had taken the money, our money, and was parading it around with a new man, a man who represented the world I'd always wanted to cheat my way into. She hadn't just betrayed me. She had replaced me, erased me. I sat there in the flickering light of the computer screen, the cheap beer sour in my mouth. The man who had faked his own death was truly gone. In his place sat something else. Something cold, something hard, something that had nothing left to lose. The game had changed. It wasn't about the money anymore. It was about making them pay. I was coming back from the dead, and this time there would be no tears for a dead man. There would only be a reckoning. Getting back into the States was the easy part. The border around Matamoros is a sieve, and a man with a little cash and no questions can slip through like a ghost. I stole a wallet from a drunk sleeping off a mescal bender. The name on the driver's license was Francis J. Blevins, a sad-eyed man from Ohio with a face like a forgotten potato. From now on, I was Frankie B. It was a nothing name for a nothing man, perfect for the work I had to do. I didn't go straight to Houston. That would be stupid. I took a bus to Dallas, then another to San Antonio, looping back, watching my tail. I was a ghost, but ghosts can be hunted. I spent my nights in cheap motels and my days in public libraries, reading everything I could about Carter Vance and my darling widow, Lola. Vance was a titan, a self-made man who'd clawed his way up from the West Texas oil fields, leaving a trail of broken companies and ruined men in his wake. He was respected, feared, and according to the papers, a philanthropist. He gave to charities, funded the arts, and had a politician or two in his pocket. He was the real deal. And he had my Lola. Lola had shed her past like a snake sheds its skin. She wasn't Lola Rourke from La Mesa anymore. She was a Houston socialite, her picture in the society pages, her name linked with Vance's at every high-profile event. She'd perfected the role of the tragic, resilient widow. The story was that I'd been a charming but reckless local entrepreneur, and my death had left her devastated until the strong, stable Carter Vance had helped her heal. It was a masterpiece of bullshit, and it made my stomach burn with a cold fire. They lived in a penthouse apartment in the River Oaks district, a glass and steel palace floating above the city. I found the address easily enough. I also found the name of the man who had fast-tracked the insurance claim, a weaselly little adjuster named Barry Givens, a man who'd suddenly quit his job and bought a new fishing boat. Givens was my way in. Houston in August is like breathing through a wet sponge. The heat is a wet blanket, and the humidity makes everything feel slick and dirty. I found Givens's little slice of heaven, a modest brick house in the suburbs, complete with a new boat on a trailer parked in the driveway. I watched him for 2 days. He was a creature of habit. Up at 7, off to a job at a different, smaller insurance firm, home by 6, beers on the porch until the mosquitoes drove him inside. On the 3rd night, I made my move. I was sitting on his porch steps when he came home, a silhouette in the fading light. He fumbled with his keys, his breath catching in his throat when he saw me. "Can I help you?" he asked, his voice a nervous squeak. "I don't know, Barry," I said, keeping my voice low and flat. "Can you?" He didn't recognize me. Why would he? To him, Jack Rourke was fish food. But he recognized the tone of a man who wasn't selling Bibles or magazine subscriptions. "I think you have the wrong house," he said, trying for bravado and failing miserably. "Frankie B," I said, standing up. I let the porch light hit my face. "A friend of a friend, or maybe an enemy of an enemy. Let's talk about a boat." A brand new Mako 236, a beauty. Must have set you back a pretty penny. He swallowed hard, his eyes darting towards the street. I don't know what you're talking about. Sure you do, I said, taking a step closer. I could smell the fear on him, a sour, sweaty odor. You also know about a life insurance policy. A big one, $500,000 to be exact. A policy that paid out awful fast for a man lost at sea, a man named Jack Rourke. His face went the color of old dishwater. He dropped his briefcase. That was a legitimate claim, he stammered. Tragic accident. Yeah, tragic, I said, my voice dropping to a near whisper. Especially tragic for the guy who had to swim 5 miles to shore and then find out his grieving widow is shacked up with Carter Vance. You see, Barry, that's where things get complicated. Because that man, the one who's supposed to be dead, he's a friend of mine, and he's not real happy. I was lying, of course. I wasn't a friend of Jack Rourke. I was Jack Rourke. But the lie was a shield. It gave me distance, made me an avenging angel instead of a betrayed husband. It was more terrifying that way. He wouldn't do anything, Givens whispered. Vance would destroy him. Vance can't destroy what he can't find, I said. But my friend, he's a patient man. He's been thinking a lot about irony. He thinks it would be ironic if, say, the Texas State Insurance Board got an anonymous tip about a fraudulent claim, or if the IRS started wondering how a mid-level adjuster could afford a $50,000 boat, or if Carter Vance's pristine reputation got a little muddy. I let the threats hang in the humid air, each one a little hook sinking into his soft, greedy flesh. What do you want? He finally choked out, the fight gone out of him. I want a key, I said. A key to the penthouse. I want to know their routine. When they're home, when they're out. Everything. He looked at me like I'd asked him to hand over his soul. They'll know it was me. Only if you're a fool, Barry, I said. And you're not a fool, are you? You're just a man who saw an opportunity and took it. I respect that, but my friend, he doesn't. He sees a rat, and you know what he does to rats. I didn't have to say any more. The image was enough. I could see the gears turning in his head, weighing his new boat against his future, maybe his life. It was no contest. Okay, he breathed, slumping against the doorframe. Okay, I'll get you a key. I smiled, but it was a dead thing. I knew you'd see it my way. You and me, Barry, we're going to be good friends. I walked away into the Houston night, leaving him trembling in the doorway. I had the key. Not a physical one yet, but the key to the whole damn game. The first piece was in place. I was no longer just a ghost haunting the edges. I was inside their world, a wolf in sheep's clothing, ready to tear it all apart from the inside out. And it was going to be a masterpiece. Barry Givens was a man living on borrowed time, and he knew it. He chose a Greasy Spoon diner off the Southwest Freeway for our meeting, a place where the coffee tasted like battery acid and the patrons looked like they'd given up on life a long time ago. It was perfect. No one would notice two men talking in a corner booth, especially when one of them looked like he was about to be sick. He slid a manila envelope across the sticky table. His hand was trembling. It's all in there, he mumbled, not meeting my eyes. A key card, a layout of the apartment, their usual schedule. Lola's at a charity luncheon on Tuesdays. Vance plays golf every Wednesday morning. The cleaning service comes Fridays. That's your best window. They're never there on Fridays between 10 and 2. I opened the envelope. Inside was a plastic key card and a handwritten note. I looked at the note, then at Barry. He was sweating, even with the air conditioning blasting Arctic air. You're doing good, Barry, I said, my voice calm. A man with a new boat should be relaxed. You should be out on the water, enjoying it. I can't, he whispered, his eyes darting around the diner. I can't sleep. I keep thinking, what if he finds out I talked to you? He won't, I said, because you're going to do one more thing for me. Vance's company, Vantage Development, they have a big project in the works, don't they? The East End revitalization. He nodded slowly. The Trinity Tower project. It's his baby. Leverage is high, but the payoff is huge. I want you to get me the preliminary investor list and the project's blueprints, the financial projections, everything. His face went pale. Frankie, I can't. That's corporate espionage. They'd crucify me. They're going to crucify you anyway, Barry, I said, leaning forward. The smell of stale coffee and fear filled the space between us. Think about it. When this all goes down, Who do you think Vance will throw under the bus first? The grieving widow who plays her part perfectly? Or the weaselly little insurance adjuster who fast-tracked the $500,000 payout for a ghost? You're the loose end, Barry. The only way to survive a fire is to help the guy holding the matches. The analogy hit home. He slumped in his seat, a defeated man. He knew I was right. He was already dead. He just didn't have the decency to lie down. Okay, he breathed. I'll get it. It'll take a few days. I'll be in touch, I said, folding the envelope and sliding it into my jacket. I left him there, staring into a cup of coffee as if it held the answers to all his mistakes. I didn't feel sorry for him. He was a cog in the machine, and I was about to break the whole damn thing. Friday. The window Barry gave me. I felt a strange calm as I drove towards the River Oaks Tower, a glass spire that stabbed at the hazy sky. I was Frankie B., maintenance contractor, there to fix a leaky faucet in the penthouse. A story I'd sold to the front desk concierge, a bored kid who didn't care enough to question the keycard I swiped. The elevator opened directly into their private foyer. The silence was the first thing that hit me. A thick, expensive silence. The second thing was the view. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of Houston sprawling out like a concrete beast, shimmering under the relentless sun. It was a God's eye view, the kind of view a man like Vance bought to feel powerful. I walked through the apartment. It was cold, sterile, and beautiful. Black marble floors, white leather furniture, art on the walls that probably cost more than my life. It wasn't a home. It was a statement. I went into the master bedroom. The bed was unmade, a tangle of expensive silk sheets. On her nightstand was a photo of Lola and Vance smiling on a yacht. He had his arm around her, a look of proprietary pride on his face. She was looking at the camera, but her smile didn't reach her eyes. It was the same smile she'd given me 100 times, the smile of a performer. I opened her closet. Rows of designer clothes, shoes in neat boxes. And then I saw it. Tucked in the back was a small, worn-out suitcase, the same one she'd used when we were running small cons in El Paso. I opened it. Inside, nestled between cheap, faded clothes, was a stack of letters, tied with a ribbon. They were from me, from when I was first laying the groundwork for the insurance scam, writing to her from a cheap motel, telling her how much I missed her, how I couldn't wait to start our new life. She'd kept them. She'd kept the rags from her old life while she was living in this palace of lies. The rage I'd been nursing, cold and hard, suddenly flared into something white-hot. This wasn't just about the money. This was personal. She hadn't just betrayed me. She'd preserved my love like a museum piece, a souvenir from the simple life she'd conned her way out of. I was so engrossed, so lost in the fury of it, that I almost didn't hear it. The soft chime of the elevator. My blood turned to ice. They weren't supposed to be back for hours. I snapped the suitcase shut, my mind racing. There was no time to get out the way I came in. I scanned the room, my eyes landing on the walk-in closet in Vance's dressing room. I slipped inside just as I heard their voices in the foyer. "I'm telling you, Carter, the board was eating out of your hand," Lola was saying, her voice bright and breezy. "It's all about confidence, my dear," Vance replied, his voice a smooth, deep baritone. "You show them any weakness, they'll tear you apart." I stood in the darkness, surrounded by Vance's expensive suits, the smell of his cologne filling my nostrils. I could hear them moving in the bedroom, hear the rustle of clothes, the soft thud of shoes hitting the floor. They were closer than I'd been to anyone in weeks. My heart was a hammer against my ribs. I had a small, cheap pistol tucked into my waistband. I could end it right now. Burst out of the closet and paint their sterile, perfect world with their blood. But that was too easy, too quick. Death was a release. I didn't want to release them. I wanted to trap them. I wanted to strip away everything they had, piece by piece, until they were as hollow and empty as I felt. I heard Lola laugh. "I'm going to take a long bath," she said. "All that smiling is exhausting." I heard the bathroom door close, then the sound of water running. Vance's footsteps padded across the bedroom. He was right on the other side of the closet door. I held my breath, my hand on the grip of the pistol. He picked up the phone. "Barry," he said, his voice suddenly cold, all the warmth gone. "Did you get it?" "Good. I don't care how you get it, just get it. Remember what's at stake, and remember, I know where you live." He hung up. My connection. He was using Barry too. We were just two rats in his maze. But I was the rat who was about to bite back. I waited in the suffocating darkness for what felt like an eternity. I heard the water stop, heard them moving around, and finally, I heard the elevator chime again, and then silence. I slipped out of the closet, a phantom in their palace. I didn't take anything. I didn't need to. I had something better. I had knowledge. I knew Vance was pressuring Barry for the same documents I was. He was building a house of cards, and I was about to become the wind. I walked out of the penthouse, the key card feeling hot in my hand. I wasn't just a ghost anymore. I was a virus, injected directly into the system, and I was about to start causing a fever. The knowledge that Vance was leaning on Barry Givens didn't scare me. It electrified me. It was the missing piece of the puzzle, the loose thread I could pull to unravel the whole damn tapestry. Vance wasn't just a mark. He was a player, and he was using my pawn. That made it personal in a whole new way. It wasn't just a cuckolded husband seeking revenge anymore. It was one con artist against another. May the better man win. And I didn't intend to lose. I called Barry from a payphone outside a liquor store in a part of town where hope went to die. The line crackled with bad energy. "Frankie?" he whispered, his voice a frantic hiss. "You can't call me here." "Shut up and listen, Barry," I said, cutting him off. "The game has changed. I know about your other friend, the one in the penthouse, the one who wants the same papers I do." There was a choked silence on the other end. I could hear his ragged breathing. He called me again this morning," Barry stammered. "He's getting impatient. He said if I don't have them by tomorrow, there will be consequences." "He's not the only one who's impatient," I said, my voice like ice. "Here's what you're going to do. You're going to get those documents. All of them. Tonight. You're going to tell Vance you need one more day. You're going to stall him. Then you're going to meet me." "Where?" "I can't." "Downtown parking garage. Level C, by the southeast elevator. Midnight. Come alone, Barry. If I see so much as a security guard's shadow, our deal is off. And the first call I make won't be to the insurance board. It'll be to Carter Vance. I'll tell him you've been selling his secrets to a ghost. How long do you think you'd last then?" The threat hung in the air, thick and poisonous. He knew I meant it. He was caught in a pincer, and I was the one who was going to squeeze. "I'll be there," he whimpered. "Good," I said, and hung up. The parking garage was a concrete canyon, a place of shadows and echoing drips. The air smelled of exhaust fumes and damp concrete. I got there early, parking my stolen sedan in a dark corner and watching the single ramp that led down to level C. At 12:05 a.m., a pair of headlights cut through the gloom. It was Barry's sensible sedan, moving slowly, like a car driven by a man on his way to his own execution. He parked near the elevator, his face a pale oval in the dashboard light. He got out, clutching a thick briefcase to his chest like a holy relic. I stepped out of the shadows behind him. He jumped, a small, pathetic yelp escaping his lips. "Easy, Barry," I said. "You look like you've seen a ghost." He spun around, his eyes wide with terror. "Don't do that. I almost had a heart attack." "Give me the case," I said, holding out my hand. He hesitated for a second, then thrust it at me. "It's all there. The investor list, the projections, the blueprints. Please, Frankie, just take it and let me go. I'm out. I'm done." "You're done when I say you're done," I said, taking the briefcase. I popped the latches. Inside were folders stuffed with paper, the lifeblood of Vance's empire. "You did good, Barry. You did real good." I opened the folder with the financial projections. The numbers were huge, a fantasy of profit built on a mountain of debt. It was a house of cards, just like I thought, but it wasn't enough to just show people the cards. I had to rearrange them. "You're going to go home now, Barry," I said, my eyes scanning the documents. "You're going to sleep. Tomorrow, you're going to call Vance and tell him you ran into a snag, a computer glitch. You need another day to recover the files. Can you do that?" He nodded miserably. "And then what? This is over, right?" "Almost," I said, a smile touching my lips for the first time in weeks. It wasn't a happy smile. Soon, it'll all be over. I watched him drive away, his tires squealing on the damp concrete. Then I went back to my own car, opened the briefcase on the passenger seat, and went to work. I'm a good forger. It's a con artist's fundamental skill. I spent the next 6 hours in a 24-hour copy shop, a private cubicle in my office. I didn't just copy the documents. I created new ones. I altered the financial projections, turning the massive profits into catastrophic losses. I fabricated emails from key investors, their language panicked, announcing they were pulling out. I created a fake report from a structural engineering firm detailing critical flaws in the Trinity Towers foundation that would cost millions to fix and delay the project for years. It was a masterpiece of fiction, a narrative of complete and utter collapse. I made sure every detail was perfect, every letterhead, every font, every tone of corporate panic. By dawn, I had a new set of documents, a set that would make Carter Vance, the titan, the philanthropist, the unshakable pillar of Houston society, look like a fool and a fraud, a man on the verge of total ruin. My plan was simple, elegant, and brutal. I wasn't going to leak these to the press. That was too noisy, too impersonal. I was going to deliver them myself. I was going to hand Vance this dossier of doom and watch him crumble. I wanted to see the look in his eyes when he realized his world was about to end. I wanted him to feel the same gut-wrenching despair I felt when I saw Lola's picture in the paper. But first, there was one last piece to move. Lola. She had to be there. She had to see it. She had to watch the strong man she'd traded me for turn into a whimpering coward. Her tears would be the only tears I was interested in, and they wouldn't be for a dead man. They'd be for a dying dream. I called her from a burner phone, using a disguised voice, a gravelly, official-sounding tone. "Lola Rourke," I said when she answered. "Yes, who is this?" "Ma'am, my name is Detective Miller with the Houston PD Financial Crimes Division. I'm calling about a matter concerning Mr. Carter Vance." There was a sharp intake of breath. "What is it? Is he all right?" "I'm afraid we've uncovered some irregularities in his Vantage development accounts. It's quite serious. We need to speak with him and you as his partner. We'd prefer to do this discreetly, at his home. Would 10 a.m. be convenient?" I could hear the tremor in her voice. "Irregularities? I don't understand." "Ma'am, it's best if we discuss this in person. We'll see you at 10. I hung up before she could ask any more questions. The trap was baited. The stage was set. I had a front row seat for the final act of a play I had written myself. And in this play, there were no heroes, only two dead men walking, and the woman who had created us both. The morning heat was already rising, a promise of the blistering afternoon to come. I drove to the River Oaks Tower, not in the stolen sedan, but in a rented Lincoln Town car, big and black and anonymous. I'd bought a cheap suit off the rack and a tie that felt like a noose. In the rearview mirror, Francis J. Blevins was gone. In his place was Detective Miller, a man with a grim job to do. The concierge didn't even look up from his newspaper when I swiped the keycard and headed for the penthouse elevator. I was expected. Lola opened the door. She was wearing a silk robe, her face pale, her eyes wide with a carefully rehearsed anxiety. "Detective Miller, please come in." The apartment was just as I remembered it, a glass cage in the sky. Carter Vance was standing by the window, a tumbler of whiskey in his hand, even though it wasn't yet noon. He turned as I entered, his face a mask of confident irritation. He was a man who wasn't used to being summoned. "This is a highly irregular time for a visit, Detective," he said, his voice smooth as polished stone. "I have a board meeting in an hour." "I'm afraid you'll have to cancel it, Mr. Vance," I said, placing the briefcase on his pristine white coffee table. The click of the latches echoed in the silent room. "This is far more important than a board meeting." Lola perched on the edge of the sofa, wringing her hands. "What is this about?" "You said there were irregularities. That's one word for it," I said, pulling out the forged documents. I didn't hand them to him. I spread them out on the table, one by one, like a dealer laying out a hand of cards: the fake engineering report, the fabricated investor emails, the doctored financial projections showing a black hole where his profits should be. Vance leaned over, his eyes scanning the pages. At first, he was dismissive, then confused, then a flicker of something else. Fear. It was a beautiful thing to watch. This is nonsense," he blustered, but the confidence had drained out of his voice. "These are forgeries. Where did you get these?" "That's not the important question, Mr. Vance," I said, my voice still flat, still official. "The important question is, what will your investors say when they see them? What will the bank say when they call in your loans? What will the papers say when Houston's biggest philanthropist is revealed to be a fraud?" Lola stared at the documents. her face a canvas of dawning horror. She wasn't looking at the numbers, she was looking at the signatures, the letterheads. She was seeing her future, her security, her entire new life, turning to ash in front of her. "Who are you?" Vance snarled, taking a step towards me. He was a big man, used to intimidating people. But I wasn't people. I was a ghost. "I'm the man who's been pulling the strings," I said. I took off my cheap tie and unbuttoned the top button of my shirt. I let the official, weary persona of Detective Miller fall away. I straightened up, and when I looked at them, I let them see me. Really see me. Lola let out a small, strangled gasp. Her hand flew to her mouth. Her eyes, wide with shock, were locked on mine. The color drained from her face until it was the same white as the leather sofa. Vance looked from me to Lola, confusion warring with rage on his face. "What is this? Some kind of joke? Who the hell is this?" I smiled, and this time it was all Jack Rourke. The con man, the chameleon, the man she'd left for dead. "Don't you recognize him, Carter?" I said, my voice now a low, familiar growl. "You should. You've been sleeping with his widow. You've been spending his money." The name hung in the air between us, unspoken but screamingly loud. Jack Rourke. Vance's face went through a series of contortions, disbelief, fury, and finally a chilling, calculating fear. He looked at me not as a man, but as a resurrected demon. "You're dead," he whispered. "News of my death has been greatly exaggerated," I said. "But yours is about to become very, very real." Lola finally found her voice. It was a thin, reedy thing. "Jack, I can explain." "There's nothing to explain, Lola," I said, turning to her. "You saw a better deal and you took it. I respect that. It's the same thing I would have done, but you made one mistake." "What mistake?" she breathed. "You thought the game was over. You didn't count on the dead man wanting to play one last hand." Vance recovered a sliver of his arrogance. "You can't prove any of this. These are forgeries. I'll have you arrested." "Go ahead," I said, gesturing to the phone. "Call the police. Tell them you're being blackmailed by a ghost. Tell them how you got a $500,000 insurance payout to a man who isn't dead. Tell them about the pressure you put on Barry Givens to get these documents. See how that plays out." His hand froze halfway to the phone. He was trapped. The web of his own making, and I had just lit it on fire. "I'm not here for your money, Vance," I said, though I was. "I'm here for justice. The ironic kind. You built your empire on lies. I'm going to burn it down with one." I looked at Lola. She was staring at me, her mind working, searching for an angle, a way out. There were tears in her eyes now, but they weren't tears of remorse. They were tears of rage and frustration, the tears of a predator who'd been outplayed. "You can't do this to us, Jack," she pleaded, her voice softening, becoming the purr I remembered so well. "We can work something out, the three of us. We can start over." That was her final desperate play. The con. Even now, with the walls caving in, she was trying to run a game on me. I just laughed, a short, ugly sound. "There is no us, Lola. There never was. There was you, and there was the next mark. First me, then him. You're a black hole, honey. You just take and take until there's nothing left." I picked up the real documents from the briefcase, the ones Barry had given me, and left the forgeries spread out on the table. They were a time bomb, and I just set the timer. "I'll be taking the real insurance policy information," I said, holding up a folder. "I have a feeling the bank will be more than happy to help a grieving widower access his late wife's funds, especially once the police start investigating her for fraud." Lola's face crumpled. The final blow. I wasn't just taking Vance down. I was taking her down with him, and I was taking the money that was her only lifeline. I walked to the elevator, my back to them. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. I could feel their hatred, their fear, their despair. It was a warmth that would last me for a long, long time. The elevator doors slid shut, cutting them off from me. I was Detective Miller again, a man in a cheap suit disappearing into the city. I had the account numbers. I had the passwords I'd found written on a slip of paper in her old suitcase. By the end of the day, the $500,000 would be gone, transferred through a dozen ghost accounts, ending up in a small untraceable bank in the Caymans. I drove out of Houston, leaving the glass towers and the sweltering heat behind me. I was a ghost again, a rich ghost, but a ghost just the same. I had my revenge. I had my money. But as I drove west towards the endless, dusty horizon, I knew I hadn't won. Not really. I just have proven that in the end, there are no winners. There are just survivors. And I had survived by becoming the one thing I never wanted to be, truly, completely, and utterly alone. There were no tears for a dead man, because the dead don't cry, and the living I'd learned don't deserve them.